Hi everyone. This month I'm really excited to introduce you to Oliver Spark, who's the founder of Sweet Analytics. So welcome to the Pep Talks, Oliver. Great to have you.
Thanks, Georgie. Nice to be here. I think,
So,
though I am the founder of Sweet Analytics, I sort of always try and brand myself as really being a retailer who's sort of
okay.
crossed
Yeah.
over into tech
Yeah.
rather than the other way around. But yes, certainly my real role in life is Sweet Analytics.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I come to this as a retailer, I think.
Yeah, no, I like it. Yeah, good angle to come from. So, and today we're going to be chatting a little bit more about how brands can leverage customer insights to increase revenue, drive growth. So, I guess maybe as a starting point would be super helpful if you could give us a little bit of background into Sweet and your role there, and sort of and maybe your background before Sweet, because I know you've, as you say, come from a retail background.
Yeah, thanks. So, so Georgie, I founded Sweet 5 years ago. So, and I'm CEO of Sweet. Um, my background is, as I say, I'm a retailer, and in particular, I ran the White Company, which is probably the most recognizable of the brands. And my real sort of insight into my sort of 20 years as a retailer was I only really got it when I understood about customer data. And my White Company story is that I was I took over the brand when we turned over 6 million, signed up for a very simple incentive plan, which was to grow the brand at 40% of the year, without sort of really quite knowing what that meant, apart from my spreadsheet that went 1.4 times 5 times. And until I really began to understand about customer metrics, I really didn't know what I was doing. So, my firm belief is that for anybody, in order to be successful, very much in a D2C brand, but I think across all sorts of other brands as well, you really have to have that fundamental understanding.
Yeah, interesting. And that's really what the focus with is at Sweet, isn't it? It's all about collecting that customer data and then putting it into a sort of more manageable, usable sort of way of looking at things for D2C brands.
Yeah, I think exactly. Again, from my own insights, Julia, I spent hours trying to get people to put stuff into formats that I could understand, and I think like everything in so much of the world has moved forward, and it's really it's not I think you and I both tend to work for sort of whatever you define SMEs, but smallish businesses, and there really shouldn't be a barrier to any business of that size getting to these key metrics. And so that's really what what I suppose set out as my belief at Sweet, that you needed these metrics, you needed to be able to get them really simply, and fortunately technology's moved forward that is possible, and so that's what we really try and deliver.
Yeah, brilliant. And I'd love to hear some of the sort of key ways that, in your experience, brands can use customer data to create, that more seamless customer experience across channels and touch points. One of the things we always talk about is the customer experience and making sure the right comms being sent to the right people at the right time, and having that sort of joined up approach. And data is obviously makes up a huge part of that. This is a big question to ask, but are there some sort of key sort of key touch points or key points you would highlight with regards to sort of customer data and creating that seamless experience?
Yes, very much so. And Georgie, your world of Klaviyo and email is obviously designed to take that approach of customer segmentation and effectively try and personalize the experience to people. Now, and I love, funny, I went to, I was in Klaviyo's office the other day, and it was the first time I actually saw in their loo that they had how you actually pronounce it. So I think I've managed to get that right for the first time ever, actually. It's clearly really important to be able to segment your data. That's not just in the email world where you operate, but also into Facebook, into Google. So the usual stuff about first-party data, really being able to use all that data back into assist the platforms is what you really need to be using your data for. So you need to be driving cohorts, and whether you're doing that through email and some of those segmentation, or as we as Sweet do, we sort of unify a few more of these data sources, and then taking Klaviyo, we can push it back into Klaviyo. All that approach, which you're expert at, is really about delivering the right content at the right time to the right person. And so across all your platforms, that's same strategy needs to be applied. And email just happens to be one of those strategies. We at Suite sort of take a broader view, that we're just looking at the customer's total database, and then in particular wanting to put that total database into the really fundamentals of, unfortunately, most businesses require retention of customers, but most businesses require new customers to grow.
Yeah.
And that particularly is where we try and help people really understand and focus where that growth is going to come from.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think often it's obviously we look at sort of that narrow view of just email, but actually, it can be challenging for brands to have, they've got all these different data sources, whether it's from Klaviyo or Facebook or Google, wherever it's coming from, and actually aggregating it all. And as you mentioned earlier, sort of making sense of all those different touch points, because otherwise it can get very messy very quickly with lots of different tools telling you different things. And actually, for SMEs, they don't always have a sort of dedicated analyst involved, and so having somewhere that sort of aggregates that data across the board is hugely powerful, I think.
Yeah, I think it's key, really. And I mean, time came back to myself. History. I've run brands. I've been lucky enough to have big marketing budgets, and I've had lovely agencies. And I used to, where I always expressed it, I'd have lovely afternoons. I'd walk around, and everyone would tell me great results on one thing, great results on another thing, great results. And then I've been told 3 times as many sales as I've got in the till, kind of thing. So and that's the same problem that exists at the world in the moment. And all we're trying to do at Suite is just say there are 2 fixed points in life: what your sales are and how much you've spent. And just getting to those 2 bits, and sales then broken down to what's really new customers and existing customers. Those are the fundamentals. And it's really easy and really difficult, I think, for marketing leaders in SMEs. Exactly that. You've got a Klaviyo dashboard giving you one number, you've got your Google ads giving you another, and of course those are all right and relevant, and it's important to understand them. But you still do always have to go back to the £100 in the till, and that's what we try and help with at Suite, because it's hard, and it's numbers aren't everybody's favorite piece.
Yeah, great. And do you have a couple of examples you can share of brands that have sort of leveraged these sort of metrics and really made sense of all these different touch points in order to drive their long-term growth and success?
Yeah, I think we've got lots of. If I'm being honest, I'd like to think the majority of our brands we're giving that to. I think I personally just only still work directly with a couple of brands, and one of them has been a huge success over the last few years. They've gone from they turned over 80,000 online 3 years ago, and we're at 3 million now. And that the real sort of insight I think we were able to bring to them around that was, like most SMEs, there's always a natural caution, to be honest, about this world, and normally people have had some false start on doing Facebook, doing Google, it hasn't worked, etc. So what I think we've really helped with is 2 things: is really providing them with the clarity and control. So it's just there isn't a magic answer. It's about turning it up, test, learn, moving that. So that's a homewares business where we've really helped, I think, provide them with the support to give them the confidence to doing that. And then that's also then led to them. Fortunately, they have a US presence as well. So in the same way, it's then given us the clarity on actually, we get higher AOVs in America. You may think it is less profitable because you're shipping from here, but actually they make a lot more money in the US than they do in the UK. And then that just allows you to tweak your strategy and again, focus on where you're going to drive the growth. So that's a particular example in a homewares business. There's now a beauty business that we're working with, and it was a startup, but it's an influencer-driven brand. It's a fantastic brand. So they've gone from 0 to multi-millions in 2.5 years. And what's really interesting there, and it's a sort of slight cautionary tale about this as well, is that we've all got a problem in the market at the moment of actually having data visibility, and I'm sure many of the beauty and wellness brands that you work with go multi-channel. And this was a brand that began D2C, but also launched on Cult as well, and you just lose your customer visibility at that point. So the issue then becomes, how do you control your D2C metrics? Because, you're still spending money on Facebook and Google or email or whatever channel it is, but, they may be popping up on Cult and none of us have the visibility on that. So that's, I suppose, a problem that's sort of highlighted, but by highlighting that problem, the real thing is that people want to get to the metrics of what is lifetime value, what are repeat rates, what do customers buy, what do people bundle buy, and that's the real way I think we can add value really simply by really trying to understand that then can loop back around into product strategy and everything else. That is so important. So I think that's a couple of examples where I can really clear demonstration of by understanding, you're then able to grow faster and more successfully.
Yeah, interesting. That sort of leads me on to my last question, actually, which is more around sort of building those long-term relationships with customers, and I guess it comes back again to the data and understanding what people are buying, why they're buying it, and pointing them towards more of the same or more of what you think they might like, and again using that to inform your product strategy going forwards, and that sort of thing. So it's really interesting how it not only forms the way you're communicating with clients, but actually potentially also your broader or longer term product strategy as well.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's sort of close on that point. It's just so important to understand the key metrics. So, if I go back to my sort of, white company experience, by the time I learned, what our repeat rate was for customers buying bed and bath, which was where the white company started, and how much they spent, and what the purchase gap was going to be, I then quite quickly learned, with a few disasters along the way, that I couldn't recruit enough new customers for me to hit my growth target. So one then has to actually say, gosh, well, which of these metrics can I change? And that, product is normally the first one to go to. So, we fortunately, hit quite early on, gift, baby and home, then clothing, that all sort of fitted in with the brand. And that, all sounds a bit, when we sort of, I'd love to say it was, hugely strategic, but, what that did was it changed the customer metrics, which then meant that we could afford to invest more to get customers, but then maybe we could go back to, how many new customers do I need, changed in the model. And then I began to be able to hit the numbers again. And so it's really important that, those kind of things inform. It's not just about, I'm going to sound a bit numbery, but ultimately it's, the numbers are always really about what does that drive in terms of behavior, and particularly in strategy and product strategy. If you run a jewelry business, you're never going to get great repeat rates. So, if you're like Lynx and you can think of the charm bracelet and that gives people reasons to come back, that's where product strategy and numbers begin to unify and, create really successful business models.
Yeah, interesting. Well, main takeaway for me is the getting that clarity around the numbers and having that overview of all of the different touch points you've got and using it to sort of inform your strategy going forwards. I think it's can be so easy to get tunnel vision in certain individual channels, can't it? And actually having that broader overview of really bigger picture, as you say, cash in the till and sales and actually what's happening is really important. So thank you. It's been super insightful and brilliant to have you on.
Great, thank you, Georgie. And key thing for me is I think people got a greater chance of success if they do that, and that's what I think. Your business, my business, we all have the same outlook. That's our measure of success.
Brilliant. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Oliver.
Great. Okay.